1. Round 1. Capture. Mercy on all.
There you have it. Talon rolling out on Old Faithful here. It's Jupiter who are looking to flex into the Pharaohs and Widowmakers of the world.
What you can get out of that is the fact that, okay, Jupiter have been paying attention to meta shifts so far. Amica and Hengi, look, this is two of their best heroes anyway, so they're very happy to jump on top of this. Talon, however, got to be playing something a little bit more old school for 2019 July. See how well they go with Mango on the Moira so far.
Well, Gagor is certainly doing just fine to begin with, getting the opening finish off onto Zer, and Jupiter not quite getting the pressure they need down. They finally start to land the shots on the backliners, sleep on Muse, but there's some counter pressure coming forward from Patapan, stops Hengi from finishing off those kills, and they're doing a good job of just not quite letting Jupiter get those free firing lines.
And honestly, this is a big test for Talon because we just saw Xavier fall prey where they couldn't quite deal with the pharmacy combo, and as saying that, Anakin gets himself a pick rather just as Mango Giant gets a coalescence available. Talon still have 5 members. What do they want to do here?
They do still need to answer it, because this is where Anakin is now unlocked, and that's the thing. Talon were doing a good job of limiting Jupiter's playmaking potential, but it feels like a stopgap, and this is where that's suddenly not enough. Kenmo Hero with a big EMP. They've all survived it, though, some only by the breadth of a hair, and Patapan has immediately started answering back, not just with the EMP, but also with the kill onto Anakin, and the follow-up kill onto Claire means no res, and in all that, Jupiter didn't quite snatch the point away, so Talon have still been ticking up percentages.
And this looked like it should be a much better fight for Jupiter, where they start on a 5v6 or rather 6v5 advantage for themselves. They then put in their own EMP. They do a whole bunch of things that look like it should be good, but Talon able to survive against that, keep that point control under theirs, and Jupiter now making big swaps, and it's a little weird because you do like to see the Widow Pharmacy into Talon. However, based on the fact that it hasn't been working, I don't know if this will work for Jupiter either.
Especially with Patapan still on the Sombra, that Sabagod committing a nano boost forward into Zer. It ends up being a 1-for-1, but I mean, Jupiter need better than that, right? They need to be at least not losing the first casualty. They want to be making the aggressive side of the trade, and now they're split into 2 halves. Gagora takes advantage of that back half, and that's going to be Jupiter just not even getting close to the point realistically in the course of this fight.
The other problem is because they reset so late in terms of changing compositions, they're not going to get ultimates in time. We're already at the 90% mark. Last fight territory, Talon looking for a 100-0 here, and Jupiter going to walk in with 0 ults.
And Patapan's going to walk in with another EMP most likely, if we even get to that point, because aggressive coalescence, a death on Sabagod, the EMP is there, it's committed onto Zer. Hengi as well is caught by it. This may be a back cap from Kenmo Hiroro, he'll get it briefly, so it technically won't be 100-0, but Talon have resoundingly won this fight, and they've realistically stayed in control of the point. I'll give it to them.
Talon now not going to have any troubles here, and I think it's very impactful, the fact that they can roll out on what is essentially a 3-2-1 here, Muse on the Winston. You have the Sombra there, you have Moira being played by Mango Jai, which is not really what you see a lot out of him. It's either the Ana or the Zenyatta. And for them to overpower the DPS of Jupiter, to say, hey, we might even be 1 member down here, the Pharmacy not getting as much work done, Jupiter not finding enough picks out of the Widow, not getting enough out of that, when realistically you look at it on paper, Jupiter, matchup-wise, look like they should have the better composition. They end up trying to match Talon, and I don't know if that's the right play that they should be making, because you don't really want to be matching Talon, because playing a goats versus goats, you're probably not going to win. Your real chance at beating Talon is to try and do something different and try and work around them rather than work through them.
And now Jupiter ending up again on the funkier end of that. They're going to be the ones rolling out on the goats. They've got the Winston in the mix, but it's Talon who are looking to roll out on the DPSs with the Pharah.
And I think this might be a wrong read from Jupiter, who expected potentially a goat start from Talon based on the fact that they rolled that out on Ruin. But Talon, you know, they're got a 900 IQ this one and say nope.
Oh, what a hook onto Hengi. It also alleviates some pressure from Muse. He will still go down, but it turns it into a trade rather than just a flat 1 kill and advantage. And again, the trade's still coming through. It's Gagora, but also Zer is going to go down in the mix. So Jupiter is starting to stagger, making those swaps. They have got control of the point here. This could be a way they stabilize.
This isn't where the fight will end, though, because DPS is still alive for Talon, means the damage output is still there, especially Bashful kneeling on the Rocket Barrage now. And this is where you start to see the numbers swing in their favor. They lose point control because they don't have tanks, but because they have damage, they can get kills.
Jupiter are really going to have to reinforce fast here with those changes they've made. Hengi's going to have to make his presence very much felt here. That's an early transcendence from Sabagot as well. Seeing if they could push an advantage. They do actually find some wraparound here onto the side of Talon. Bashful does answer a little bit of it back, but Jupiter is still doing pretty well in this fight. They're also still in control of the point.
And this is because there's been a decent number of trades going from Jupiter's in as well. So despite Talon now starting to pick up a decent amount from Bashful and also Patapan, Jupiter on the ground, especially with Hengi picking up his numbers, that's been pretty big, and they've maintained control of the point. Not going to see a 100-0 from Talon. Might not even see 100-0 from Jupiter either, depending on when Talon start picking things up.
Haven't seen anything out of Talon, unfortunately, and that's a 1-to-1 there, but that was with the nano boost committed onto Bashful, so Talon do have to get a little bit more done here if they still want this to end up favorable and, of course, get possession of the point. Self-destruct just slows things down, finds Gorgora too. CQB might just have to commit a res to that, and Patapan gets picked off, and suddenly Talon don't really have much left to stand on.
This is going to be the first real reset for Talon. Otherwise, this has been one long, prolonged engagement so far. And I'm going to say, I think we've seen a lot out of Talon in terms of actually getting the kills. Just hasn't been able to translate that into actually capping the point because they haven't maintained that player advantage. Jupiter have managed to get equal trades in some cases, very high-value trades in some cases, getting CQB down. Talon need to be able to find a much bigger number of player advantage to be able to actually get this cap.
Certainly Jupiter aren't going to go belly up, to say the least, and they've got some ultimates to lean on here as well. Can't say the same for Talon, having made those swaps, so we'll have to see how they navigate what is potentially the final fight here if they don't get kills, but that's a nice one to finish.
The ultimates.
Hengi with the help of a hack. There's one less ultimate on the board as well. Sabagot has still got a Transcendence that's still going to massively slow down Talon.
He's going to use it soon. Claire's hacked up and gets the sound barrier down anyway. They can still layer in the second ultimate. Sabagot does so.
Ooh, they find another pick though, and that's before anyone gets saved by the support ultimate. So both members who have died just before a support ulti's come through. Muse also critically stayed alive. Now has a primal rage, which he won't even need to use. Stars crossed indeed, and Jupiter losing their two supports. Talon will finally wrest control of this point off Jupiter.
And Talon now, okay, they know they can't wait to play a slow game. They can't wait to just have Patapan and Bashful get all the picks. They go for more of a 3-2-1 comp over here. Mango Giant lands a bunch of abilities. You can see that during that time, Kema Hororo was sleeping. Zer was hacked during the primal race, so couldn't get much done there either. Talon now have to work to hold on to this point because Cora is off the edge.
That's a decent one. EMP aggressively from Patapan, but he's caught by the self-destruct, and Ken Mohororo might have just single-handedly won them this final fight, and it indeed will be a final fight if Jupiter win it because they've got the 99% on the point. That's looking like Jupiter going to make this one interesting. Like I said, not just going to go belly up, looking to tie up Ilios here.
And I think Jupiter this time around is starting to prove, okay, we did roll out with a decent composition. Talon tried to make the DPSs work, but in some ways or another, it kind of worked, it kind of didn't work, and Talon paying the price this time around. Might just be time to reset your minds as we head into round 3.
We certainly still favor Talon moving forward, but losing that one stage there does keep things, like I said, keep things interesting, and we gave credit to Jupiter, and rightly so. They can still take a map off here. This isn't just going to be a walk in the park for Talon.
And I think the game plan was right from Talon in the fact that, okay, they had the Widowfire early on. It did a lot of damage. They lost tanks, which is unfortunate. If they had tanks aligned, there wouldn't have been a very quick cap from Jupiter. And that very quick cap from Jupiter resulted in such a huge advantage in terms of objective percentage that Talon couldn't catch up. Later on in that round, they were forced to change off compositions because they couldn't wait around to find those picks any longer. If they had less time pressure to work with, they would have been able to maybe eventually get the Widowfire to work. But that's all in the past now. Talon thinking, let's just stick onto this for now. 3-2-1, Patapan back on the Sombra. This has been working. Jupiter going to start on the same thing, and you're probably going to see both teams stay on the same composition. Only change that will happen is Zer will go Ryan.
And the thing is, Talon have won that mirror matchup. They've even won the slight asymmetrical matchup with Zer on the Winston before, so this is comfortable for them.
See what else happens as Patapan does get hacked up pretty early. That's not good news for Talon.
It's also an early pick onto Patapan, unfortunately, so even worse news, extra read all about it. Jupiter should get priority over the point here. Talon aren't just going to give it up without a fight, but Muse in a lot of trouble here. Likely to go down, indeed will be finished off, and Jupiter looking to get this early cap.
I think Talon, okay, they make the call to go to the point early. They have the extra Ryan. Does make sense for them to do that. They want to take the point brawl. However, losing Patapan, going to the 5v6, Muse can't pick up the pace and maybe get a counter trait here. They don't have the extra Sombra for the padded damage. That's a bit of an issue. However, despite losing, Patapan's actually stayed relatively equal with Hengi, who's in a bit of trouble.
Yeah, gets hacked himself now, but they aren't quite closing out this kill. There we go. Takes them a bit of time, but they get it done. And now Talon are looking to find more of the brawl on the point once again, this time with a numbers advantage and the EMP threat from Patapan. They actually capped the point here. Jupiter let that one go over.
Jupiter, they needed to find one more ultimate. Okay, they go with Transcendence. That would have been a decent tempo play, assuming they don't all get splashed with a Bionade from Mango Giant. That's the other factor that you have to start thinking of, is if Mango Giant starts landing some abilities as well, that's a big problem. There is a timing window that's great for Jupiter where they have the EMP versus Talon where there's no support ultimates. Talon have an EMP, but there's no defense.
There's the Transcendence against Patapan, and like you say, Talon don't have the same answer to Hengi, except just not dying. Jupiter didn't quite get a follow-up on Hengi, but in all fairness, Talon weren't able to do the same with Patapan's EMP thanks to Transcendence, and now the other ultimates coming more into play. That's a nice find onto Mango Giant. They don't quite finish off Xur in that Graviton Surge, the Primal Rage making him a little bit too healthy. They've still found a trade, and now an advantageous trade, 2-for-1 in favor of Talon, and again we see Jupiter starting to back out.
And this is where the math game gets interesting as well, because Kogora did have a grab, used the grab, but Claire didn't quite have the sound barrier. So yes, they could defend against the EMP. Talon also defended against the EMP as well. Not quite in the same way, but they made it work with Mango Giant, using Bionade, using the Nano Boost, and you really expected Jupiter to get more value out of the EMP than the opposite from Talon. That didn't happen. The extra grab is what swung Talon over. Yeah, they didn't kill Xur, but they got Anakin first, got Xur later, converted that into a 5v4, and that's enough of an advantage to win.
And now Jupiter have had to make a bit of a change up. We see Xur looking into the mirror matchup, and that's where Muse and Gagora both just have a huge leg up here. In fact, all across the board, Talon have a leg up for this fight.
You have to see Sabagot here. If he gets the Transcendence, this will be ideal. Patapan's waiting for the timing.
Goes on in, and there is Sabagot in with the answer. The Shadow's still nice, but again, the Transcendence helps answer it. That's a double value Transcendence. The hack is so huge, they needed the second support ultimate to deal with the grab. They do find some kills, though, and that might still do it for them. CQB commits a sound barrier, but Mango Giant goes down. Ken Mahororo finally drops. That might just be enough here. If he had stayed alive, they could have kept presence on the point. And I tell you what, Jupiter nearly kept that one through just by getting picks at the back end of that grab, even though they didn't have sound barrier. Nicely done by Talon, though.
And this is why you got to respect Jupiter, because they keep it interesting and they keep it close despite being such massive underdogs. Any other season, in pack history, Contenders aside, all season since 2017, if you pitted the last place team against the #1 team, you wouldn't have a game this close. And it's still possibly going to be a 4-0 for Talon. They are going to take a first map victory on Ilios. It's still going to be that 1-up. However, the fact they lost a round in there, the fact that there were some very almost 50-50 fights that could have gone either way, I think Jupiter have a lot to prove here. And even if they don't win, I mean, this adds to the heartbreak, because they're at this level now where you're in week 6. They are very competitive. You bring this Jupiter to week 1, you have a very different result for the season.
Exactly. It might have even been a Jupiter that was able to get off to a hotter start early. Might not be in the position they're in. Look, the end of the season, you're probably still going to lose to Talon. Not because you're bad, it's because they are really that good. The problem is Jupiter, like we say, that slower start, that rough start to the season has cost them. And at this point, it's cost them utterly.
It's a little unfortunate for them. Paris still coming up next in 3 more maps ahead of us, including that one. And there's room for Jupiter to make something happen. We talk about the potential for not necessarily, okay, is it possible an upset victory could happen? Sure, maybe Jupiter in a world, somewhere in the multiverse could probably win this. But in this current universe here, there is maybe a probability that they can take a map. They may be the first team to take a map off Talon this season so far. That's more likely. Still very difficult to do. Ilios was, I want to say, reasonably close. They got 1 round off. Even Lighthouse was somewhat convincing of a competitive game. Maybe not towards the end. Once Talon started to really roll along and individual mechanics started to really come out, you know, Patapan getting that manual hack at the end, finding all the right positioning, getting the ultimates up just that much quicker than their opponents, and Talon really outskilling Jupiter towards the end. But there are many other areas in the game where it does look even.
Just occurred to me that Talon is kind of close to Thanos, like, just in terms, it's like there's the T in there, there's an N, it's like a similar cadence. It's a bit of a stretch, but Thanos, I don't know, it's a stretch, but I feel like you can make the argument, maybe.
There's a universe out there in the multiverse where
Talon
that reference would have worked.
No, Talon is called Thanos, but Thanos is called Talon. Still doesn't work. It's just too much of a stretch, no matter how you slice it.
Yep.
Even in the multiverse,
this is not going to be
I'm not funny.
This is not going to be the universe where that reference works. But I want to see progressing now forward. What is interesting to me so far is that Talon is still finding a reasonable amount of success on. They would anyway on you would say any comp. But what is interesting is that they kind of struggled on the Widow Pharah.
Yeah,
they actually have arguably the best Widow. They have arguably one of the best Pharahs, if not the best Pharah, between. I mean, Patapan also plays, but really Bashful's known for the Pharah on that team. So you have both your Pharah play and your Widow play together. And that comp, surprisingly, didn't quite give them the results. And now, once again, I'll argue that on Well, maybe if they had a bit more time to work with, they would have eventually had that. Because they still did the damage. The fact that they couldn't keep feet on the point. Point is, on Pharah, though, on Paris, though, you're going to see a lot more of those two heroes being played.
The city of love.
Spinny.
That is why we are fighting here.
Love is the reason that people fight. It's
Deep,
spinny
man.
more. Money is the other reason.
Yep. I'm 14 and this is deep.
Sometimes, if you love money, it's both.
Yeah. That's the plot of Lord of War, isn't it?
And so, as expected, look, you have Pharah Widow already. Talon going to opt for something else. Apudo's coming in here for Bashful on a soldier of all things. So, Talon may be the masters of off meta today.
Ooh, Gogora's already down. They've at least found a counter trade, but that's not really an even one. You need Gogora so that you can entrench yourself. Muse is the other main tank, but he's not performing that same role of setting
Players got baited.
Position. They are starting to make a count for something, though, especially with the pressure on Hengi, and Talon look like they're going to be able to stabilize despite not having Gogora for this fight.
And I was going to say, okay, it's a one-for-one trade, but one team can res and the other one can't. However, if you do go for the res and you don't make it out alive, that's actually a big loss. That just means you probably should have waited for the respawn anyway. You now have to wait for your Mercy. Talon end up winning that fight. Jupiter reset entirely. 1 minute already gone.
Jupiter, they have a hardish time finding the right setup here. Again, now Gogora back in the mix. They might not get quite so lucky on getting the early pick on Gogora this time around.
What's going to be interesting is how Apudo continues performing, because it's not really typical for you to see this. That is a worthwhile trade. I have to say, Mercy down is big.
Yep, it's a little bit unfortunate to lose Patapan there, but like you say, the Mercy down is just far more impactful right now. The rest of Talon still have so much playmaking between them. It's hard for Jupiter to break this, and if they get a member picked off, no res until Claire's back.
And really, you'd like to see Hengi be the playmaker here, and I'm sure he's trying, but he needs to be the one that can do the most. There's so many easy targets. I say easy, so far he hasn't gotten them, but so many targets that he really can get.
It's a nice timing on the Immortality field, kept Muse alive, allows him to now Primal Rage, but he needs to get something done with it. He found one, but Anakin's found two, actually three, if you include the non-Rocket Barrage kills, and Apudo doesn't get much done with the Visor. Anakin gets himself a fourth in the fight, now raining rockets onto Patapan, does get the kill, but Jupiter are the ones more or less set up on this point, now just reinforcing Xur here. They should be able to turn this into a cap.
And unless Jupiter suddenly drop a lot of members, they should not be losing this cap at all. Yes, Talon will have respawn soon. They have an EMP, but likely they'll be saving this for just a little bit later on. You're also starting to see why you don't run a soldier, because Visor, not a very good ultimate. Even when paired up with the Nano, he got instantly shut down. Very easy to pressure out a soldier. If that was a Widowmaker instead, this would be a much more difficult task.
Hello.
Oh, yes, hello. Just got really distracted by Widowmaker saying hello. I was like,
and in English,
felt very personal. Yeah.
French.
What's wrong with bonjour? We're in Paris. Get it right. Patapan though with this EMP. Ken Mohororo has one as well, but you certainly favor the defender with it.
Jupiter have the longevity here. If Claire stays alive, uses Valkyrie, reses the first person that dies, you can see this fight going very well for Jupiter, but they can't afford to make too many mistakes, if any.
It's going to be the EMP first out of Ken Mohororo. Patapan now we're looking to go in with an answer. They found Claire with it, but Claire's already been allowed to pop that Valkyrie, so it's going to be hard to actually do anything about it. Probably will be with this many kills coming through for Jupiter. Just getting everything they needed here, and honestly, Talon were a little bit slow on the play there.
They just couldn't save anyone, and this is where, okay, you pop all the ultimates from Jupiter. A Primal Rage, that gets 2 kills, by the way, is more value than you usually expect.
Certainly more value than what Muse was able to get earlier on point A. They're trying to rally back in, though, and Patapan on the Doomfist has really made an impact. They actually might just be able to hold on here. 95.1% though. Jupiter will be pleased with that. They got more than enough time to get the remaining third. And I mean, Talon are the sort of team that can just pull something out of nothing like that on the defense. So still a good fight for Jupiter on the whole.
And I'll be honest, Jupiter, like you mentioned, good fight, right? 2 ticks came in. Well worth even if they lose that one. I still think, okay, you see Claire kind of get baited into the race again. Probably didn't expect the Doomfist out from Patapan. Drops in there, instant punch right into the wall. Jupiter still have an EMP to work with. This is a recharging phase regardless. So either they win with the EMP and take the last tick, or they lose with the EMP but get their other ultimates. And either way you look at it, that's a positive for Jupiter.
Patapan desperately needs to charge the CMP back up, though, because he made the swap onto Doomfist. Yes, it bought them this extra round of the defense, but Jupiter still come in relatively favored with that EMP on Ken Mahororo. Good sleep on Anakin, though, and chunks on Ken Mahororo slows them down just a touch.
Any bit of slowdown is nice. 3-man hack onto 3.
Nano Boost trying to keep Muse in it. He wasn't one of the members hacked, but it's a 1-for-1 right now on Brigittas, so it's okay for Talon. They found Zer that answers Muse, but it's a numbers advantage still for Jupiter. However, this is Assault. Trades do end up favoring the defenders usually, but with only a third to go, it's enough for Jupiter to get it over the line.
And this is where you have to look at, first of all, the A defense, then into the initial snowball phase for Jupiter, where you still have a Pudo on a Soldier going into B, transitioning from A to B defense. And sadly, I just can't really agree with it because low value even on B. Low value enough on A, even lower value in my opinion on B, doesn't bring enough to the table. You actually have, in this case, start with A. Patapan is probably your best quarter maker player. Aputo's got a ton of experience on your Sombra and is your other Sombra player after Patapan. Anyway, if you played at those 2 members that way around, that would have been enough onto A to do a lot more. On B, that's probably the time where you might start thinking of going back onto more standard Rhine Goats or Winston Goats or even Bunker, something else where maybe you start putting a Pudo on something signature like a May that he's played a decent amount. May can really stop up a snowball push if you can play that correctly, and there's only a few players that can really play it well, and that one of them would be a Pudo.
I have to say, it was very satisfying to see Patapan roll out on the Doomfist and just straight flex here. Like I said, this is not usually somewhere a defending team could expect to actually win a fight with these picks, but Talon are not just any team. And that's why you don't say that that's all that bad for Jupiter. And I mean, you look at how it worked out. It took them less than a minute from that point to actually finish the cap anyway. So it doesn't really end up costing them too much. 3 minutes 14 is still more than plenty in the bank.
And I'll say this, better teams have gotten less versus Talent. And I only say better because they're higher on the standings. So technically, all 7 teams based on standings would be better than Jupiter. However, in the actual performance, Jupiter have done more than a lot of teams have done. And the fact that you have this time bank even here, 314, it's a lot.
Still just trying to work out why that pro was being advertised with an egg. Scouting it out, they know it's bunker, and I expect we'll see Talon probably make a bit of a shift onto a dive. Could be a spam comp as well.
It is.
There we go.
Gagora on the fire, that's the new one slightly. Patapan and Pudo, though, you do want to see them on DPS, so flexing that triple for now.
It's interesting. That is one of the things when you don't have Bashful in. Gagora does have to do all that flexing.
He is one of the most flexible players on the team, so if anyone is going to do it...
1 meter square box.
If anyone is going to do it, it's probably going to be him, and that first pick... It's going to get rares, but they lose positioning, so I think the damage in some ways is done. You can already see some rotation coming through because of it.
Yeah, and the lack of positioning allows Gagora and Patapan to both get a little bit more unlocked. You see Aputo now wrapping around the side as well. He's got better firing lines. Patapan gets a little bit punished for it, and Jupiter have been able to pull back to the 2nd position now.
And just remember, positioning is everything for a Bastion team. Because they're already this far back and now forced to hide inside the room, Talon, with their respawns and Mango's back, Patapan's back, they are going to be able to get themselves around the point and force Anakin into a bad spot. He might die here.
Yeah, it's a brilliant biotic grenade. He's able to barely stay alive until it wears off and Sabagod can top him back up. And now Hengi trying to keep all these DPSs at bay. He's got to work triple shift to keep tabs on all these members.
And look at all the angles being taken by Talon here. Dragon Strike coming through is going to displace everyone.
Oh, that's absolutely massive. Finding Anakin and Zer, and now Claire's got to make the impossible decision. Who do we res? Goes for Zer. They need that shield up. They need the position anchorage. Gagora does go down, and Ken Mahororo finds Patapan, who would have otherwise had an EMP. So the nano boost from Sabagod going on to Ken Mahororo has paid off a bit, but again, you're still say Talon have enough left in the tank if they want to continue, but Jupiter are still getting the kills.
We're just buying time because Talon need a lot more time to work with themselves. Jupiter have now their members back, Anakin's back on a Tracer, a Poodle with another Dragon Strike, but I don't know if it's going to do much.
It didn't get cancelled at least, but you're right, doesn't actually achieve much. He ends up going straight down by Ken Mohororo's hand because he was immobile. Talon is still trying to reinforce this point, but honestly, Jupiter have also had some respawners of their own. That being said, Talon looked like they might have held off long enough that with their slightly closer respawn, they're now staring into a numbers advantage. And that should...
Oh goodness, man. You serious?
Muse loses that 1v1. Suddenly everything I say has just been eaten, right? Like, who's even going to win this at this rate? Jupiter can still reinforce.
Talon are going to get this eventually because they have the closer reinforcements, they have the better overall picks. CQB's alive for any potential raises, but Jupiter are making it hard. They're making it so tough. Even now, Anakin's being annoying. Ken Mohororo's being annoying. The cap's going to come through, but at what cost?
Exactly, and Ken Mohororo comes in with a whole hog. They've got some
this might be a waste.
Rounds on the point, but Mango Jai's actually picked up some, and now Ken Mohororo slept, means he goes down. It ends up being, I mean... It's such a high variance play, right? It's either the hero play or it's a disaster, and it ends up being a disaster.
So he ends up changing anyway, so Jupiter not going to be feeling that loss too hard. Anakin with a pulse pump can do some real damage here. One good stick, if it lands to CQB, that's your push over. If it gets one other member, CQB gets a raise, and you deny that raise coming through. Talon don't even want to take a chance with the fire comp. They know, okay, we just spotted Jupiter. They've swapped comps. Now is actually the best time for us to go on goats ourselves if we want to do that. And I believe that's what they will do because they are going to play for the long game here. Snowball's not going to happen. Probably wasn't going to happen anyway. They're probably unlikely to match 314. But if they get about 2 minutes left and then overperform or rather just outperform Jupiter during the time bank, that's enough to win Paris.
The thing that's so nice about this as well is Jupiter actually swapped off the one ultimate they had. Talon, because of who they have to change, actually preserved 2 of their higher charged ultimates anyway, so they still end up having an advantage here.
And this is where EMP Nano onto Muse might even get you an Earth Shatter if you're lucky. Jupiter, going to have to look for the rotation, counter rotation, in fact, because Talon are looking for space here, looking for any members that may be caught out as they go to the point.
Anakin's actually still kind of hiding to get some kind of wraparound here, and that's, really low value EMP, but the Biotic Grenade starts to make up for it. Immortality Field down, though, as Anakin's getting pressured. Pataphan will find that out with the help of CQB, and Muse is unlocked on the front line, so despite the low value EMP, they do still get the kills. Muse just sort of charges off yonder. He'll be back, though, I'm sure, and that's a very convincing fight win for Talon, who is still rotating into other ultimates.
Let's see what Anakin can do on this Doomfist. We already saw... Okay, not a lot. Sabagon might give do something, though.
Answers your question pretty quickly. Hengi also needs to get a lot of work done. He has previously on the Tracer, but this time no such luck. Sabagon nearly keeps Claire alive, rather, but unfortunately, again, no such luck. Ken Mohororo down, and that is the cap. It is actually more time in the bank, though, for Jupiter when all is said and done.
Yep, so one thing ends up being true here. It is not a 3-14 for Talon, and would you believe it? Like I mentioned, it's going to actually be a slight advantage. Jupiter win the regulation time and have the greater time bank going into time bank, which is crazy. I will repeat myself here to say most other teams, in fact, basically every other team has had worse against Talon in this exact same scenario. Do Jupiter end up winning Paris? Probably not. I would say this is now another great chance for them, but odds are still against. Look, if they do, it'll be amazing. It'll be probably the biggest thing to celebrate of the whole season for them. However, I am somewhat surprised at Talon cutting it this close as well.
I mean, it starts to look like Ilios again, right? Where Jupiter actually did get that one map win in there. It was tied 1-1. That's honestly close to losing a map. This is slightly less close than that in some respects. Yes, it is more time for Jupiter, but it is only 7 seconds. So as much as it's better than what most teams accomplish against Talon, it's still not like it's overwhelming odds. It's still not super close to Talon losing a map. However, it is far closer than they've come all season.
And by the way, based on how Talon did on A, which was a lot slower than Jupiter, they actually made up for a lot of time, lost on A, on B, where they saw the opportunity to go for a neutral, and they're very happy to take a neutral against you in a goats versus goats. And like you mentioned, they preserved the EMP, such a big deal. Jupiter have a decent amount of work to do now. If they can waste a lot of time and prevent that first tick, or even any ticks from coming through at all, that's their win condition for Paris.
Hengi got the opening shot onto Mango Jai, not enough to kill him, didn't find the headshot. Talon now just lining up, waiting to get in position.
And Talon don't have time to work. They can't play a slow comp here. They just wait for things to happen. Apudo going down is unfortunate. I don't even know if CQB is going to be able to go for this one.
Barely. And Aputo's head is just underneath the roof of that car, so he will get back alive. But it's time lost, and they don't have a lot of it.
Just like in the movies, when there's a firefight, you can hide behind a car. And Talon now, Patapan is going to go onto this own Widow. And you kind of want to see this. You want to see Talon play Pharmacy plus Widow because they have the right players to do so.
And these guys are just getting buffeted about. There's the Holtz, there's the Conks from Anakin, and they're constantly in the firing line. They've not actually moved past this first bit of choke point in this entire opening minute.
Gotta say, this is going amazingly for Jupiter so far. 1 minute down, and both teams have equal time for the most part. 7 seconds worth of difference, and Talon have barely got it past that first choke. And Jupiter, because they're not playing this Bastion defense anymore, they're not relying on one player to really make things work. They've got a lot of different areas where they can make plays happen. Both Anakin and Hengi have doing a lot of work so far.
I just want it to be known that if they do not cap here, the perfect season dream would officially be dead. The best result would be a draw, and a draw, for those of you who aren't familiar, is not a win. That is an early kill onto Hengi, but Sabagod has answered it back by finding Agora. CQB maybe wants to find a res, and for what it's worth, the player didn't actually get to res Hengi. Now Aputo goes down though, so it's not really that favorable. They get Rocket Barrage out of Anakin, but it's also a kill for Anakin, so Talon, they're just getting nowhere.
There's way too many kills going against Talon currently, and on top of that, there's a lot of ultimates available for Jupiter. They can still play Dragon Strike into hold. They can still get defensive plays in with Nano Boost, with the Valkyrie in there as well. Hengi's going to pop the Infrasight for the next rotation for Talon. Means they can't even really get themselves around. Muse on the ball now. He's at least on the back line.
Ooh, doesn't quite get the knock off onto Zer that they'd want, and Patapan goes down to a headshot. Now Muse is in trouble. Probably. I don't see him getting out of here. CQB's committed a res into Patapan, but they're still at a numbers deficit, and Jupiter have so many ultimates.
They've barely had to spend them. It's just really the Infrasight to check positioning. Other than that, I mean, Jupiter are happy to just wait until the right moment. 30 seconds left to go. Patapan's now onto a Genji. This is a last-ditch effort. I did not think we would see Talon in this position, yet here we are.
And if anyone goes down, it could just be game over already here for Talon. As I say that, Aputo and a second one. Ken Mahororo finds 2. Patapan dies in
seconds.
They don't want it to just end like that. They don't want it to end not with a bang, but with a whimper. If they are going to go down, if they're going to lose their perfect record this season, they want it to be difficult. They want it to be hard for Jupiter. But Jupiter are just making it look all too easy, as they are going to complete a full hold in the time bank. Best case for Talon is now a draw, and that is no longer a perfect season for Talon.
And can you believe it? Jupiter, of all teams, are going to force the first, not loss, but at least not a win for Talon. That is absolutely incredible to see that this is the result. I mean, now it's been cemented. I've said, look, it seems that Jupiter so far has done better than other teams in similar scenarios. Based on an actual cemented result, that can never now be taken away from Jupiter. Unless Nova then actually take him out next week, but we'll see what happens there.
Right?
But right now, to this date, over the 6 weeks that have been played so far, it's actually Jupiter that are doing the damage.
Certainly the first ones to make God bleed here. And that could actually be more significant than anything, right? As we do look ahead for Talon, who do still, as you say, have to play Nova next week, and then playoffs beyond that. Yes, they are assured of a first-place seed at the end of this round robin. Yes, they are assured of that semi-final and quite possibly a finals after that. But how many other teams start stepping up to the plate now that you've shown that Talon is beatable?
And it just feels worse for... it's a bittersweet moment, I want to say, for Jupiter, because you just have to look back on the season and think, okay, week 6 you go up against the hardest team in the entire region, and you can do this versus them. You've lost convincingly, in many cases, to much weaker teams, and I don't say that lightly. They were much weaker teams compared to Talon, and you took a big loss to them. Really unfortunate.
Talon now at least want to push this to a draw, because now they do actually have to look at a situation where, hey, maybe this goes 1-1. Hey, maybe they do end up dropping at least a match if they're not careful.
Let's now be very clear. The world where this becomes a map win for Jupiter is actually very high. So as much as we say draw, actually there's a decent chance that Jupiter get that one thing. All it takes is some decent mistakes out from Talon, which, to be fair, we've seen a few now of that right now.
There's a death
if this
already
breaks, I mean, yeah, that's one. If it comes 2, it's a big problem.
At least this one's resable, but like I said, if it becomes 2, it hasn't just yet, but it feels like if it keeps on raining, the levee's going to break. And Jupiter are happy to keep raining fire down.
Talon got to defend perfectly for 3 minutes and 7 seconds, of which, 40-ish seconds are gone. That's another player. I don't know if there's a res available.
Not for a little bit at least, and they do have to answer that with a trade now. Muse takes damage. He's down.
That's a lot of members.
And that might just be it. That is 3 of 6. No,
oh my goodness.
6, and the turrets of Boot, CQB, and Mango Jai, the last men standing, and not anymore. And there you have it. Jupiter, the first team this entire season to take a map of the reigning champions, a team they once met in a grand finals. They're showing that there is still some of that team left alive in Jupiter.
Making the impossible possible, the improbable just that probable. 1 map victory. It's actually 1-1. Not only is the perfect season over for Talon, but now there's a blemish on the record as well. And look, it's a tough expectation for Talon to live up to, but also the one required when so far to this date they had been undefeated against, I'll say again, better teams in the region, higher on the standings. The only team they haven't played is Nova. All other teams they've played in 4-0, but the 8th best team based on standings, they're not going to get a 4-0.
Now look, here's the glass half full thing about this. This is something you can look at with Talon. It's sort of a wider contextual thing. This is a team that is still looking to secure that spot in Gauntlet. Oftentimes when you see a team go unchallenged in their home region, they go international and they absolutely bottom out because you lose that sense of getting used to being challenged. You come across a team that challenges you, and Gauntlet is going to be full of other teams. I mean, I even said it, 2 other teams around the world at today were also undefeated at present. That's the caliber of team you'd come up against there. This might be a bit of a wake-up call for Talon to tighten a few more bolts ahead of what is ultimately their goal of international competition.
I'll say as well, like, even if Talon lose today, and let's, that may be getting a little far ahead of ourselves, even though we know that's now definitely possible, this wouldn't really prevent them from winning the season.
They'll still be first place, regardless.
They're still going to be finishing first, and on top of that, they'll be still the favourites to take the championship and go to Contenders. I'll say practice-wise, they're still playing against the best team. So yeah, that aside, they're not getting the right amount of practice, and it's a wake-up call in terms of like showing up in officials. I think, especially when you go up against the team that you are most expected to beat. All other teams possible in the region. And I will say again, expectations are not fair on Talon, and the only reason the expectations are not fair, we would not say to any other team, you're supposed to go undefeated here. But for Talon, because they are that good,
they really are.
You kind of do have to say that. And sadly, that shifts a little bit now. Now that comes down to how more dominant do we still look for the rest of the season and for the rest of the match. And speaking of the rest of the match, we've still got a half coming up for you, Jupiter and Talon. Things are getting interesting. It's 1-1 going to the break. We'll see you on the other side.